So you're thinking of moving to Italy for love. Let me start by saying you're not alone in this consideration, because many people do indeed move to Italy for this very reason. And whilst it wasn't my own personal motivation for wanting to move to Italy, it is often assumed by many people that it was. But you see, moving to Italy for love does come with a few caveats. And as always, I'm going to serve it to you straight and share with you some of the important considerations you need to make before you say ciao to your old life. Because let's be honest, Italy is incredibly easy to romanticize. From the food, to the cobblestones, to the weather, to the scenery. The idea of falling in love here, or indeed following someone you love here, feels like it's something straight out of a movie. And sometimes it is indeed that magical. But here's what the movies don't show. The long days when you don't understand what anyone's saying, the homesickness, and even in a way, how your identity can slowly unravel when you're not in your familiar surroundings. Love is a beautiful reason to move to Italy, but it can't be your only reason. If you are really contemplating this decision, I truly believe there are some essential questions you need to ask yourself before you start on this journey. And the first question is, would you still move to Italy if your relationship ended? Everything really begins from this point, because if you are moving to Italy purely for the relationship, I really think you're starting to enter into dangerous territory, because the problem is Italy, although it is really beautiful and magical, it can also be very brutal on the other hand, because it's not an easy country to live in. I always tell it to you straight. It really does depend on where in the country you are, and also it depends on the kind of life you're going to build for yourself here. You don't walk straight into a film set when you move to Italy. You walk into reality. You walk sometimes into places that are really poor, or into towns and cities that are extremely chaotic and dirty. You don't necessarily walk into the beautiful, dreamy images that social media and the internet love to portray. So you must have a deeper reason for wanting to move to Italy than it just being about your relationship. Because here's the thing. If you wouldn't move to Italy outside of your relationship, if your relationship ended, you would never even consider moving here, then why are you doing it now? And it's quite blunt of me to say this, but it is true, because the problem is if you move purely for the relationship, you also run the risk of becoming too dependent in that relationship, and you run the risk of making your entire world and reality all about that connection. And in a way, that can make you lose your identity even more, but also isolate yourself and make your experience here a very difficult one. Now, whilst I didn't move to Italy for love, I did find that when I started a relationship here in Italy, I did lose myself in a way, because I became heavily dependent on that person to help and support me in terms of adjusting to life here in Italy. And in a way, that meant that I lost that independent aspect of myself that I had moved here with. And this is what I don't want to happen to you, because it took me a while to rediscover that aspect of myself again. So make sure that if you are moving here, it's really because you have a love and genuine curiosity for this country and you are ready for new experiences. Because if you are moving here just for the relationship, I promise you, it's not necessarily going to turn out the way that you had hoped. And this kind of leads nicely into the second question. Do I love Italy or just the person who lives there? Now, I think it's really, really important that you at least have a sense of curiosity about the country that you're moving to. Maybe you're not fully in love with it yet, because I think love is something that deepens over time. And when you actually spend time in a place and you start to understand it on a much deeper level, that may be when love really occurs. Really, at the beginning, it's like an infatuation. But you need to have that sense of curiosity. You need to want to discover things. You need to want to be prepared for everything that life in Italy can throw at you. You want to appreciate the beauty, but you also want to accept the reality of what life here in Italy can bring you. If you are only here because you love the person you are with, I really think that you close yourself off to the magic, to the beauty, to the lessons that this country can teach you and bring you. And so I really want to encourage you to, in a way, open your eyes as to what life in Italy is really like and discover for yourself if it's a place that you could see yourself living in and actually building some kind of meaningful life here outside of your relationship. Which leads nicely into the third question that you must ask yourself. What kind of life do you want to build for yourself living here in Italy? This is fundamental because your life shouldn't revolve around your relationship. And if you don't have any external goals or objectives, then unfortunately at some point this is what it's going to lapse into, which doesn't result in a very healthy relationship for one, but also can be really damaging for you as well if you're living in another country without the usual comfort zone and people that you know around you. So the first thing you want to think about is like, what are you going to do with your day-to-day life? You know, are you going to be working here? Are you going to be able to retain your work on a remote basis here? How are you going to make friends here? How are you going to make connections here? All of this is really, really important. Don't get lost in the romanticism of Italy when you are thinking about this step. Be really eyes wide open, realistic and real about what it is that you are going to do with yourself living in this country. You need to have a sense of purpose and you need to have a sense of identity. You also need to build an independent life for yourself outside of your relationship. This is crucial because you might think that any friends of your partner will automatically become your friends. And whilst indeed they're going to be friendly, I hope, with you at the beginning and interested in you and curious about you, it doesn't mean you're going to have the same kind of friendship that your partner has with their friends. Friendships here in Italy are very deep rooted. I talk about them in a bit more detail in this video up here, so go watch that next. But essentially, you don't just walk into somebody's life and immediately inherit deep friendships with all of their friends. It takes time if it happens at all. So you need to create your own network and group of friends living here in Italy to support you during that early stage. And, you know, like to build your confidence and your own sense of identity and worth living in this country. Knowing people already through your partner can help you with that. It helps you to escape the initial sense of isolation that many people who move here on their own feel. However, it is not a substitute for making your own connections. You need to have your own connections here in Italy. You need to have your own sense of independence living here because it is what will make you feel whole and it is what will make you feel better when you start building your life here. And also, you want to retain yourself. Don't lose yourself. This has been the biggest piece of advice that I share on this channel because it's something that I did. I lost myself for a time and it was a really uncomfortable place to be in. So you don't want to make the same mistakes as me. You need to keep your sense of character, your sense of worth, the things that you're interested in, your own friendships, your own interests. You need to keep them alive. Don't lose yourself just because you've moved to Italy and just because you're in a relationship with another person from this country. Please make sure that you retain a sense of self-worth and a sense of purpose here in Italy because life is extremely difficult if you are not able to do so. If these questions are difficult for you to answer, don't worry. The important thing is that you are starting to consider that your life is going to involve a lot more than just the connection you have with your partner. These questions are things that sometimes I think people don't think about or they consider them all too briefly before they've packed their suitcase and started living here. You know, nothing is forever. Nothing is permanent. And I'm not sitting here saying that your relationship is going to finish, but what if it did? Like if you aren't willing to live in Italy outside of that relationship, what would you do? And that's why you have to really be honest with yourself when you plan to make a big life move based on love. You have to be sure that if that relationship were to finish, or if you changed your mind in the future about that relationship, you would still be happy to live in that country or with the life that you have created for yourself. And that's why it's super important to reflect on these questions and super important to really consider how your life is going to look here in Italy. Even though I didn't move to South Italy for love, I can honestly tell you that love does not help you with learning the language. Love does not help you with integrating into life here, to opening bank accounts or to dealing with the bureaucracy. Sure, you can have somebody supporting you, translating for you and helping you with that process. But a lot of that work comes from inside of you. It doesn't come from the relationship and the bond itself. You have to be really, really sure about your decision. You have to be realistic as to what is going to be ahead of you and the kinds of things you are going to have to do to set yourself up for life here in Italy. It is no good moving to Italy under the rosy guise of being in a relationship with somebody and thinking that's enough. It isn't. You must make sure that you retain your self-worth, your independence, that you take the action and the personal responsibility to create a fulfilling life for yourself here in this country, and not one that you end up regretting later on because you didn't put enough thought into your decision. If this is something that you really want to do and you've got the resilience, the curiosity, and the kind of strength of mind to make it happen, I'm here and I'm rooting for you. But please make sure that amongst everything else that you pack up in your life, you pack up your sense of independence and your sense of self-worth. And if you want to continue learning about what it's really like to live here in Italy, then please hit subscribe and join this community on this channel, because I'm all about sharing the reality of life in Italy and talking about the things that you don't often find on the internet when it comes to life in Italy. I will see you in the next video.